I'm not sure if you have a take on this, but Waylon Mercy was just starting during your time in the WWF. I thought he had a hell of a gimmick, but he didn't last that long. Could you give your opinion as to why Waylon Mercy didn't work out?
Good Lord. And I've said this in other places, I just had a bad taste in my mouth over Danny Spivey from being in the Skyscrapers when the Midnight Express and the Dynamic Dudes and everybody else had such a miserable fucking time working with them in WCW. Trying to get – because Spivey, and I'm not trying to bury him. Nobody needs to go find him and, fucking say, hey, Cornette's sticking you again. But just to bring people up to speed, I did not think that he was big, but he's one of those guys – he was like John Laurinaitis. He was one of those guys that was big enough to where he didn't look big, but he made the big guys look smaller. He was like 6'5" or 6 and 270, but he had no musculature, no physique, and his work was workmanlike, but not in any way standout in my opinion. He had multiple injuries, and I don't know why, because I never saw him taking any big bumps. I didn't much care for his fucking promos or his style of work. He was bland to me. He was there, and him and Sid, he was having contests with Sid every night to work stronger, so they were like invulnerable, and you couldn't get anything accomplished with them. And then here comes a couple years later, Danny Spivey as Waylon Mercy, and the gimmick was supposed to be fucking Robert Mitchum in Cape Fear or De Niro, whichever your generational movie taste prefer. But why they thought that he was the one to do it, I have no idea, because I'd never enjoyed any of his other promos. Maybe he pitched it. They should take it a gimmick, paid him for it, and put it on somebody who could fucking do it. And by then he had bad knees. I understand he's had hip replacements and knee replacements. Maybe, and he played football, I guess. Maybe that was the start of all the problem. I haven't seen him take any Ricky Gibson fucking backdrops. So by then he physically couldn't do it, and he phased out pretty much, and that's why that gimmick went nowhere. Especially also because it was at the point in time where you had plumbers, a De Niro ripoff, goddamn, just chaos on that roster in '95. It was ludicrous. Everybody was either a fucking construction or contractor tradesman or some kind of goddamn goofy gimmick. And here's Dan Spivey trying to be De Niro. It was fucking rotten. Now, the more I think about it, it's starting to offend me again. But if you had a guy that had a real Southern accent and a real Southern preacher way of talking and a real fucking mind for that type of shit, that might have been a great fucking gimmick. But then to go so far as to wear the flowered shirts, it's literally, instead of taking the concept of what you're trying to do and making a gimmick like that, you're just taking that fucking gimmick. Here, this is what this is supposed to be, which is Doom anyway.
All right, so no Waylon Mercy.
And I'm not casting aspersions on the team of Butch Reed and Ron Simmons, aka Doom, now, by the way. And that's the thing. Well, and Butch, we forgot to mention that the last run Butch had, he got out of the natural, and he and Ron were doing great. I thought they looked fantastic as Doom, but then I think that Ron's last run there. Why did he leave WCW? Was he injured and just never came back? Did they let him go?
They turned Ron babyface, and then Butch disappeared. I think it may have been an injury, or he joined the rodeo. I forget the exact story. And then he came back briefly when Watts was there. I mean, when I say briefly, maybe for a taping or maybe just for a week. And then he was gone again, and I don't know.
Okay, well, and I heard he was doing rodeo, now that you mentioned that. And it makes sense also that if Bill Watts was in charge and brought Butch Reed back to one taping and didn't bring him back, that means that for some reason Butch should not have been in the wrestling business, whether it was his physical or personal condition or both.